So welcome everyone to the Clear Admit Deferred Enrollment MBA event series. This is a series that I love every year. We're going to talk all about deferred enrollment programs. I'm going to moderate. My name is Graham. I'm the co-founder of Clear Admit, and I'd like to start by just introducing each of our panelists briefly. So let's do those intros. First up, we have Trey Coles, who's the Associate Director of Admissions at Carnegie Mellon's Tepper School of Business in Pittsburgh. Welcome, Trey.
Thank you so much, Graham. Very excited to be here. Thank you to Clear Admit as well. This is actually one of my favorite events of the year too, so I'm looking forward to today.
Excellent. Yeah. So we'll get into, I will share why I love this so much in a little bit. But let's also introduce Hillary Wiesel. She is the director of the Advance Access Program at Wharton. Hey, Hillary.
Hey everyone, thanks so much for your time today. As Graham mentioned, my name is Hillary Wiesel. I'm the director of the Moelis program at Wharton, and Trey and I share the same excitement and favoritism for the Clear Admit event. So thanks for having us today.
And thanks for saying Moelis for me. I always forget how to pronounce the name of this program, so I'm really glad you did it for me. Last but not least, we've got Katherine Alford. She is the Director of Admissions of the Future Year Scholars Program at University of Virginia's Darden School of Business. Hey, Katherine.
Hey, Graham. Little update, did get married recently. So I am now Katherine Roberts, but I am still the Director of Admissions for the Future Year Scholars Program. So nice.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Nice to see so many people from so many different places, and excited to see you later.
Yeah, definitely a lot of fun to gather this group. So yeah, we will change that in the future, Katherine. Mike on my team is saying that's on him, so we'll figure it out. All right, so let's move ahead though, because what the structure for today is we're first going to talk about these programs. We're going to hear a lot in detail from each of our panelists about how deferred enrollment works and the unique kind of elements in each of their programs. But then what's really great is at the end we're going to open up some breakouts so that you can go and talk with Katherine, Hillary, or Trey, just depending on questions you have. So hang on to your questions because of that, because you'll get them answered in the breakouts that we do. The first thing I wanted to start with is just kind of a little bit of a primer or an explainer on early access deferred MBA versus the traditional MBA application process. So just to be really clear, if you get into a deferred MBA program, it's still an MBA program. There's nothing different about the actual academic experience in terms of going. It's a 2-year program. But the cool thing about deferred enrollment is that you get to apply when you're still in university and secure a spot in the future in an MBA program. And I always say this every year, but I'm just going to say it again because it's really important to me. I know when I personally was thinking about going to business school, I already knew when I was in undergraduate that I might want an MBA, but there was no way for me to lock in a spot. And I would have killed to lock in a spot that way. I mean, it's just such an amazing way to sort of, then have that early part of your career post undergrad be a little bit more, you can kind of just do different things with it. You don't have to have this pressure of, oh, in a few years time, I'll probably apply to business school and everything's got to be perfect to get me there. So that's the basic idea here is these programs are offering you seats in a future MBA class, and we'll get into the nitty gritty of it, but essentially, they allow you to work for anywhere from 2 to 5 years usually, and then join the MBA program. And we'll get into a lot of detail on this, but that's the kind of gist of it. It's just a way for college seniors or folks sometimes who are already in grad school who've gone directly into grad school from undergrad to basically apply to business school and lock in a spot for the future. Probably enough said on that. I want to turn to the panelists now. We have some good sort of roundtable questions that we'll go through. So the first, there we go. The first question is, why should someone consider a deferred or early access MBA? And what are the benefits to the student, when it comes to applying early versus waiting and going through the traditional process? So Trey, I want to turn to you on this one and see what your thoughts are.
Yeah, absolutely. And Graham, I agree with you completely. There's many reasons why students should definitely consider a deferred MBA. And to be honest, I wish I knew about these opportunities when I was going through the graduate school process 10 years ago, or not 10 years ago, well, after undergrad. So definitely deferred MBA programs are much more popular now and certainly, more beneficial for our students. But there's so many reasons. And I think the first one would be security. You have an opportunity to really lock in a future spot at a top MBA program, whether it's Tepper, whether it's Darden, whether it's Wharton, while you have the time to gain that professional experience, whether 2 to 5 years, but also without the pressure of like reapplying. And it's actually a perfect story. I had an interview earlier today, and a student, mentioned, I asked, like, what are some challenges that you'll face in the MBA program at Tepper? Or like, what do you think will be the biggest obstacle for you? And he's like, it's going to be an obstacle for me to get back into that academic mindset. I've been out of the school setting for 2 to 3 years. I've been working professionally, and I haven't taken an exam or a midterm in some time, and it's been a while for me. And I think for the deferred students, you're going to still be in that academic mindset. You're going to still be in the job search like mindset. So it's going to be a lot easier for you to adjust, certainly during the deferral period compared to a traditional full-time MBA student. A big benefit is that you're integrated into our communities. That's first and foremost at an earlier pace, or earlier trajectory, excuse me. You'll have access to the admissions team. You have access to our current students. You have access to alumni. Some programs offer career coaches too. So like, you have all of this before officially stepping onto campus, again, compared to a full-time MBA student as well. And I think a lot of this gives you opportunity for skill development with more of like a structured process. So, and I'll speak more Tepper specific, and we'll dive into the other schools later, but we offer like the guidance during the referral period to ensure the students are prepared for their post-MBA success. So, we offer opportunities to learn more about like the ROI of the program. You have more time to save financially. You have more time to learn more about scholarship opportunities. And I think another benefit, Graham, and my last point is that you certainly have time to find the right program for you. You're able to really, experience what it's like in Pittsburgh, or experience what it's like in Philadelphia, or experience what it's like in Virginia before starting the program. So you can fully immerse yourself whenever you join the program in a full-time setting, because you'll be spending the next 2 years there. So I think a lot of the time in admissions, we're trying to find the right student, but we also want students to find the right school and make sure that we're the right fit for you. So I think during that deferral period, you have that opportunity, and it gives students, a sense of clarity, but also with some breathing room as well before you begin the program full time.
Yeah, some really good points. I wanted to just ask briefly, Hillary or Katherine, is there anything that you wanted to add on this one in terms of like, what are some of the key benefits? Is there anything that, I know Trey covered a lot of ground, but is there anything else that you guys wanted to sort of add?
I could hop in here. I think Trey did a great job giving an overview,
Yeah.
and I thought maybe some specific examples could also be helpful. There was a student admitted who was working for Mattel, and because of her offer to deferred enrollment program, felt like she could take bigger risks and make bigger decisions. And because of the confidence she had in making bigger decisions, was able to advance more quickly within the organization, gain promotions at a faster pace than if she had been a little bit more timid. And then the other example I would give is students who have had a great job, maybe in consulting, for example, but then knowing they had an offer in deferred enrollment, went to take a risk and work with a startup for a period of time, and gained so much expertise in the 3 years they spent in that startup, more so than they had at the consulting firm, and would not have done that if they had not had the offer to deferred enrollment. So just a couple of examples to provide a little bit more color.
Yeah, excellent. Hillary, was there anything else that you wanted to add on this one?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think going off both Katherine and Trey's point, Trey had mentioned the resources and being able to stay connected during the deferral period, which I think is really important. But two things. One, if you see an MBA on the horizon, there's truly nothing to lose by applying to the deferred enrollment path. Most of our programs are, one, reapplicant friendly, and two, for the deferred enrollment route, either have no application fee or a reduced application fee. But should you be admitted, you can also use that deferral period really wisely in terms of how you're spending that time. So Katherine mentioned a couple examples of students pivoting, but even if you choose to stay at the same company, you have a seat secured at a top MBA program in 2 to 4 years from now, right? So I just met with a Moelis fellow in his deferment period who was considering possible post-MBA pivots, and he's already able to network with current Wharton students and Wharton alums to learn more about their career paths and trying to figure out, should I matriculate in 3 years or 4 years? And, what is that path to get to that postgraduate plan? And he doesn't have to worry about applying next year, right? He already has that admission secured and is able to sort of use the Wharton name and really thoughtfully network and have the conversations that he needs to have have during his deferral period in order to maximize his time once he matriculates. So I think Katherine and Trey covered everything, but I just kind of wanted to use that in terms of just being really thoughtful whether you do decide to pivot or not from a career standpoint during that deferral period, just being smart with your time, which I think is one of the main benefits as well.
Yeah, and I'm so glad that you guys have really fleshed this answer out. Just because, for me, in the short term, you're like, wow, this is a chance to just lock in a spot, right? So it takes the application process away from having to do it later, that kind of thing. But the point that you guys are really hammering home is it also allows you to be really thoughtful and guided in the first part of your career post college. And I just remember I was working. I had no one was telling me, oh, maybe you should try to do this or that. It was you're kind of out on your own. And then you decide, oh, I'll apply for business school. And then you get a lot of great counseling once you get into an MBA program and stuff. So that's the beauty of this too, is that kind of early career coaching, early career risk taking, et cetera, just by becoming part of an MBA community right as you get in. Let's move on though, because we have a bunch of questions. So our next question, this one I'm going to throw to Hillary. And this is about letters of recommendation, because obviously when you've worked for like 3, 4, 5, 6 years and you're applying to Wharton or any of these programs, it's easy. You go to your boss, you go to a former boss, you have all kinds of people that you could draw upon. But if you're still a senior in university, like what kind of recommendations are you guys looking for?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's a question of who should write my letter of recommendation, and then also how many are required per program, right? So I would imagine that most of you are applying to a couple programs, which is a really good idea. Each program might have differences in terms of how many letters of recommendation are required. And then on each of the program's website, there's likely a little bit of guidance in terms of who should write your letter of recommendation. I think a common theme among all of our programs is you should pick the recommender of someone who can speak about you in a really quality and ideally lovely way, right? Who can provide another lens and voice to your application to tell the admissions committee who you are. But also all of our programs are looking at your application within the context of knowing that you are a deferred enrollment applicant and candidate. So we will know that you don't have 6 years of work experience and that you are not asking your current full-time work supervisor, right? So in terms of who should write your letter of recommendation, again, it's going to vary by program, but typically you will see maybe a faculty member that you worked closely with or took a couple classes with. Maybe they supervise an independent study of yours, or you did academic research with them. Maybe it's a summer internship manager or supervisor. Maybe it is a, someone who was a supervisor or advisor for a club that you were a leader in, a community supervisor, right? If you volunteered in your community and maybe they're a leader of that organization or nonprofit that you worked closely with. So doesn't have to be the person with the fanciest title, whoever you feel like knows you the best and can speak to who you are and how you will be successful in a future MBA program in the classroom and community.
Yeah, and I think that last point is really important, because I feel in some cases there's a tendency among candidates to say, oh, I've got to go, my parents know a guy who's a CEO somewhere and that's who, I'm going to get. So the idea really is just find someone who knows you really well and who's willing to write about you. And we always say this, but if that person says, oh, you write it, I'll sign it, you need to tell them that's not not acceptable, walk away, or just ask them, no, I really need you to write it. And if they are not willing, you probably should find somebody else. Yeah, any quick points on this one before we move on? Any other? Actually, I would love to see, just put up some fingers. How many recs do you each require? 1 for Wharton, 2 for Darden, and 1 for Tepper. Okay. Did Hillary cover that one, or Katherine, Trey, anything you wanted to add on this?
Yeah, no, I think Hillary covered it perfectly. And the only thing I would add is, and she mentioned this, like, I think for all students that are looking for recommenders, is take some time to like set aside to talk to the recommender beforehand. Like, coach them to provide like examples of like your impact, your teamwork ability, any initiative, your problem solving. If there's a club that you run on campus or an internship that you're proud of, like give them time to like actually explain to them what a deferred MBA program is, what your post-grad goals are, so they can write the most effective, but also clear recommendation for you. So just like take 30 minutes, 15 minutes over coffee, just try to find time to make sure that they know exactly what you want out of your career, but also like the recommendation that they're looking for. So that's always helpful too.
Yeah, thank you, Trey. That's a really important point. I feel like it's almost like a little test of your management skill to see
Yeah.
like, oh, you've picked this person. It's not just putting their name into the form and telling them, hey, fill this out. You should take them to lunch or whatever and make sure they know your kind of, your why. Like, why do you want to go to business school? Katherine, were you going to add something on this one too?
Yeah, so to Hillary's point in the chat, the deadlines, the letters of recommendation are usually the piece of the application that is holding up your application from being completed, submitted, and reviewed. So
Yes.
do try to get ahead of that. I would also just add that I think there's a tendency for students to assume that because we are academic programs, we're looking for an academic letter of recommendation. Faculty do not always write the strongest letters of recommendation. Usually we get the best feel for what you're like in the classroom based on your transcript. In the letters of recommendation, many of us use the common letter of recommendation that GMAC issues. So you can pull that up and look at the questions that are asked of your recommender. A lot of them have to do with your leadership skills, the way you communicate with other people. So think about who in your circle would do the best job responding to those specific questions when you're choosing who to write your letters.
Okay. Yeah. Excellent point there too. We have one more kind of roundtable question, which is for Katherine. So, you know, in most applications, there's a lot of questioning around, well, what do you want to do with the MBA afterwards? And my one thing that I always think about, if you're still a senior in university and you haven't even had your early career pre-MBA, it's maybe kind of seems really far out there in terms of planning out, well, what's my long-term career plan? So do you have any advice there? Like, how should someone who's deferred be thinking about this stuff?
Well, know that if you don't know what you want to do after your MBA program, you're in good company. I think most people don't, including some current MBA students aren't quite sure what they want to do with their MBA. But keep the big picture in mind. So the MBA degree is a degree in leadership, it's a degree in management. And so for anyone who sees those traits inherent in who they are and the experiences they've had to date, is probably going to be a step they're going to want to take in the future. And so as you think about your career goals with your MBA, think about how leadership and management are going to play a role in your future and harp on those things as opposed to the specific industry you want to focus on or function area.
Okay. Yeah. Excellent. Anyone else have any thoughts on the kind of goals side of this? First of all, I think all of you asked this question, right? I mean, I feel like it's in each of your applications, but correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah, it is. So, any other advice? Oh, Katherine's shaking her head.
Yeah, we don't really ask what you want to do. It's more of like, how does an MBA, we reword it and say, how does an MBA fit into your journey? Because we
Okay.
don't
So a
think you
bit
know
bigger.
yet.
Okay. All right. Um, I think some of the advice that I've heard over the years that's quite good as well is just, this is an exercise, right? I mean, it's not like when you get handed your diploma on stage at the end of the MBA, they pull out the essay and say, "Oh, wait, you've got an offer from Amazon that you've accepted, but in your essay, you said you were going to go work in consulting. So sorry, no diploma." Like it's not that way at all. And so many people change paths over time. As Katherine pointed out, there are people in MBA programs who are still kind of, finding their path and stuff and figuring it out. So I think it's really an exercise. And I do feel like when I see a younger candidate who's like, yeah, I'm really interested in this area. I'd love to do something, of this nature in terms of the role I want and types of companies I'd work for. That says to me, wow, they're at least kind of, they have a potential plan. I'm not going to hold them to it, but it's useful and it's a good exercise. Anything else on this one before we move on? All right. So now what we're going to do is get into sort of just some kind of lightning round questions for each of you. So Trey, I want you to knock these three out, and then we'll do this with each of you. But Trey, so like, who can apply to your program? What's one thing that you think is really interesting about the student experience at Tepper?
Yeah.
And also, can you elaborate a little bit on what's the sort of support or community that you're providing to people during this deferred period? So once they're in and they're out in the workforce, waiting those 2 to 5 years before joining the MBA program.
Yeah, absolutely. Graham, thank you. And so students are eligible for the Future Business Leaders Program at Tepper, or current undergraduate students that are in their senior year. All majors are welcome. I want to be very clear on that. Every major is welcome. You can have a liberal arts background, engineering background, computer science background. We welcome all majors. Typically, these students, again, you don't have any work experience, so you're between 0 years of work experience Also, we do allow international students in our program, but you have to have graduated from a U.S. institution. So all domestic U.S. students, but if you're international, you had to have graduated from a U.S. institution. So that is the breakdown of students who are eligible for our program. I think the biggest part, maybe like the student experience at Tepper, is what we call as the Tepper Advantage. And it typically is like more of like a data-informed leadership component and a tight-knit community. So at Tepper, our program is fairly small. Full-time MBA, and it's fairly small. You'll see anywhere between 150 to 170 students. And it's by design. And I think that, that leadership component is really critical. And we utilize the Accelerated Leadership Center, and it's a department on campus that works closely with you during the deferral period, but also while you're at Tepper. So our ALC, which is the Accelerated Leadership Center, really walks through like your leadership style and helps you like more so from like a personalized coaching standpoint, with certified professionals who have been in the workforce and in corporate for many years, but they really work closely with students to help you identify their strengths, those blind spots, or also your leadership style. In our full-time MBA program, we see a lot of students that are coming into Tepper with great leadership experience and great skills, and the leadership, our ALC helps you kind of like hone them or work on them. But also students come into Tepper that maybe lack those leadership skills. That's perfect for ALC to really help you through different assessments, through different feedbacks. So you have like a personalized leadership roadmap. And I think that's another part of this Tepper student MBA program or experience a lot of students really enjoy. Now, I think during the deferral period, there's a lot of support, and I've had a chance to oversee this program over the last year. We've been hosting somewhat of like bi-monthly check-ins with students. So from the admissions team, so we're just getting to learn more about, what are your career goals? When do you plan to matriculate? And just learning more about you and what you're experiencing right now within the workforce. But also you have access to Tepper's events. So we have a ton of networking opportunities during our yield travel in the springtime, typically anywhere between February to May. And then we do our big summer travel. So any event that we're traveling to, whether we're Chicago, New York City, or Washington, D.C., we're inviting students to meet with us for dinner or for coffee chats, just to hear more about your experience and, what any questions you have about Tepper. Something that's a bit newer that we're doing as well, and that we're starting up in the next couple of weeks, is that there's a Canvas course where our students will be able to join. And we're partnering with our MCC and our ALC and different departments on campus just to provide like more like just like general information about like business schools. So our MCC has recorded videos, and they're talking, what is consulting? What is finance? What are operations roles? What are marketing roles? So it's kind of just giving students more of like a introductory experience to Tepper, and certainly whenever you whenever you begin the program, you'll be able to hit the ground running. So that's the resources that are available for our deferred students, certainly during this period.
All right, excellent. Yeah, that was a really terrific summary of all these different things. I guess one thing I'm just curious about is so you talked about, access to events and things. Are the students, do they meet each other? I mean, obviously it's interesting because someone might apply now and get in, but we don't know what year they're necessarily going to start. Someone might say, oh, 3 years is enough work experience for me, I'm ready to go in. And others might wait a bit longer because they, and I presume they have to tell you what, like a year out or something when they know they're thinking of coming. But do they get to interact with each other? And then if so, how are they doing that?
Yeah, absolutely. So typically that's what we have. So we have our, they're called virtual deferred happy hours. So there's not alcohol involved. It's all virtual. So our students are certainly meeting online just to connect and learn more about their experience. But this Canvas course is going to be more so an opportunity where students can, start discussion boards and get to learn more about which like roles or industries that they're joining post-graduation, and just a way to connect. So the virtual happy hours is the way the students are connecting. But also I'm hoping within the next within the next year or so, students can come to campus, with for a specific deferred event and get to learn more about Pittsburgh and get to meet each other. So for right now, it's just virtual. So.
Okay, got it. Excellent. Yeah, thanks for clarifying on that.
You're welcome.
Let's turn to Hillary. Same questions for you, Hillary, with respect to Wharton's Moelis program. Take us through.
Awesome. I will try to lightning round these 3 questions. So who is eligible? So any student anyone during their final year of undergraduate or full-time graduate school. So it could be a U.S. institution, could be an international institution. If you are applying in your final year of a graduate program, right, this is deferred enrollment program. So we just ask in order to be eligible that you have not accrued full-time work experience, right, in between your undergraduate and graduate studies. So again, anyone in their final year of study in undergraduate program or graduate program. Some questions have popped up with recent info sessions that I've done for international students have asked if their undergraduate program is only 3 years long. That's totally fine. We know that, institutions around the globe are structured a little bit differently, but again, you would just want to apply in your final year of study. So that is who is eligible to apply, final year of study, undergraduate or grad program. In my opinion, what's one highlight of the student experience in your MBA program? Two things. First thing, really quickly, right? Where you live and where you study obviously impacts your experience. I think Philadelphia is an incredibly underrated city. So that's my plug for Philly and the love that I think that most Wharton MBA students develop for the city during their 2 years. Second thing, real quick, I would say the resources that our career management team, yes, love emoji, the resources that our career management team has curated for students is truly unparalleled. There is a platform, proprietary platform that the career management team has created. Is called My Action Plan, where they have industry-specific resources for over 20 respective industries that breaks down recruiting quarter by quarter, has resume books of students who have successfully recruited for that industry, recordings of past programming, because we certainly know that recruiting and postgraduate outcomes is a huge factor, right, in terms of that professional growth and ROI. And what support or community do you provide to admits during their deferral period? I think, you will find common threads throughout all of our answers, but we invite all newly admitted Moelis fellows during their deferment period, and of course, when they're a current student or an alum, to a Slack workspace and also a private LinkedIn group, so folks can informally get to know each other and connect. We host virtual synchronous and asynchronous programming, similar to Trey, probably about every other month, because we know you all are working intense jobs, so want to be mindful of your schedules. And then usually once or twice a year, we host an in-person city happy hour. So for example, this July, we were in New York, and there were about like 90 Moelis fellows there, a mix of students in their deferment period, current students and alums. So that was just really awesome to see like such a high number of folks gathered in the same room. And then I'll be in San Francisco in a week where we'll do a happy hour for Moelis fellows in November. So mix of both virtual, informal, and formal-ish programming.
Okay. As I hear you and Trey talk about all this stuff, I'm increasingly jealous because I had no interaction with my MBA program before, when I was working. So this just seems like such a great opportunity. Katherine, let's turn to you and hear the same kind of, these 3 lightning round questions for you.
Sure. So in terms of eligibility for Darden's Deferred Enrollment Program, the Future Year Scholars Program, is anyone in their final year of undergraduate study or anyone who has just finished a graduate degree but has not begun their professional experience. A highlight of the MBA program, I'm going to say what I hear the students say most often, and that would be the Darden Cup. So for those of you who don't know, students are divided into 6 sections at Darden, sections A through E. And throughout the year, they compete in different intramural activities, trivia competitions, a talent show for points for their section toward the Darden Cup. So it's kind of like if you think about Harry Potter and their cup as a similar type of competition. And so the students get really motivated and fired up to participate in those throughout the year. And then there's a lot of pride if your section wins the Darden Cup. So that is definitely a student experience highlight. And then in terms of support and community, similar to the other schools, we offer networking through LinkedIn, and we also are using WhatsApp for students to connect with one another. We invite them to various dinners and networking events in different cities across the United States. We offer some virtual career programming, career support, and I think that covers most of it. Yeah.
Okay. So, what I want to do now is actually, before we get into some of the questions that were submitted by attendees in advance, I wanted to ask each of you just something. This is a simple question that's been kind of in the back of my mind as we've been listening to each of you, and that is, what is the like sort of timeline for someone? Let's say they do want to come. I was mentioning this to Trey earlier. Like, when do they have to tell you? So let's say I get in. I'm a senior. I apply. I get in. I know I'm going to go work, and after 2 years of working, I'm like, oh, I want to start an MBA program now. Like, what is the timeline, and how did they alert you to the fact that they want to be part of the class of whatever year it is? So let's just go in order. So Trey, do you want to just tell us briefly about that? Because I'm curious.
Yeah, sure. So we typically tell students in the deferral period to let us know by the round 2 deadline, which is typically the January, the January before the semester starts. So January 26th, students starting to reach out to us now. There's an enrollment form we send out to all the first students, and they would submit that and then tell us they're planning to matriculate, whether that next year or the future. So that's kind of tied in, Graham, to some of our check-ins that we do is with all of our students that are in that like 2 to 3 year period, is to let us know whether through the enrollment form. And then there actually is like a very like light interview for the students that are planning to matriculate, just to learn more about their current role, updated resume, and things of that sort. And then it's for scholarship purposes too. So it's basically an enrollment form that we provide for our students. Yeah.
Okay, so it sounds like for Tepper, it's winter before you would matriculate the following
Correct.
fall.
Correct.
Hillary, what's it like at Wharton? Is it the same idea or?
Excuse me. Yes, same as Tepper in the winter. So formally, right, every winter we submit an annual intent to enroll form where you let us know, do you want to plan to remain in deferment? Do you plan to matriculate? Or in one-off instances, some folks are like, you know what, this isn't for me anymore, and that's totally fine. So it's typically winter. And then just aside from that, like kind of to the previous question of like what support do you offer, and I think this is true for all of our programs. If anybody ever just wants to talk, right, outside of that formal check-in period, our team, we make ourselves available just for, advising, like, this is what I'm thinking, this is what I'm going through. So formally the winter, but anyone can chat with us whenever they want.
Got it. Okay. Katherine, what's it like at Darden, and when do you need to know from folks?
Yeah, so it's the same. So I'm going to use this airtime to highlight another aspect of the deferral period, if that's okay.
Great. Yeah, no, that's great.
Okay, great. And I would just say, don't try to rush it. I think that once you've been admitted, I think there can be a little bit of an anxiety of like, let's go ahead and get started. I've got this program. I know it's ahead of me. But the deferral period is a really special time for you to explore and figure out your interests and understand your strengths and understand areas that you want to use the MBA program to strengthen. The average student in these MBA programs has anywhere between 5 and 7 years of work experience. And so you do want to come to your MBA program confident and feeling like you can contribute and participate to the same degree and also recruit for the same companies in the same roles. So my advice is come at minimum of 3 years if you can, and try not to rush getting to business school.
Yeah, great advice, for sure. We're getting a bunch of questions in the chat. I would just remind everyone, each of our panelists has been kind enough to agree to jump into a Zoom breakout when we wrap the main session here shortly. So they'll take questions from you in there. But let's keep moving because I did want to get some of the questions that were submitted in advance. So the first one is for Trey. What's the difference between a deferred enrollment MBA and a master's in management? And this person wants to know, like, do you have any advice if they're trying to decide between one or the other? Yeah. So what are your thoughts there?
Yes. So I think this is a very popular question that we all receive in admissions and certainly in the deferred MBA space. I think it depends on your postgraduate goals, I think first and foremost. And, as we mentioned, a deferred MBA program is that you're gaining like the real world experience first, and then you're entering the program that's built to like land, like whether a leadership role. And again, we're requiring you to have anywhere between 3 to 5 years of full-time work experience, during that period. Compared to what an MIM or a Tepper, it's an MSM program, is that it's typically right after undergrad. So it's available for students that are looking to, hop into a graduate program right after undergrad. But it's also like a great launch pad if you want those business skills like right now. before you land your first or second job. So I think that, for more of our deferred students, they typically want more like a management or a strategic role post MBA versus more like entry level roles for the MIM program. The network's going to be completely different too. MBA, again, MBA classmates or MBA cohorts typically have professionals across many different industries, whether it's consulting or investment banking or marketing, et cetera. And I think that will give you more of like a polished network compared to maybe MIM, is that, again, typically students are earlier in their career. They may have less industry experience and maybe less leadership experience. And again, these are younger professionals that are looking to, again, gain these business skills right now. So I can continue to elaborate, but I think more so it depends on your post-grad goals, what you're looking to do post-MBA or in the future, excuse me. And that'll determine, exactly what what program is the best fit for you. MIM programs are typically a year. In most cases, MBA programs are anywhere between 2 years and up. So it just depends on what you're looking to do, what your compensation ceiling is, what your career advancement is, but also what the ROI, what you're looking to get out of a program. So.
All right. Excellent. Appreciate that, Trey. Yeah. One thing I would add is I feel like, yeah, I mean, you're really smart to hone in on the goal. Like, what do you want to do? And I also think that some of it may depend to some extent, like, what did you study and are you actually ready to dive into the workforce based on what you studied? Or maybe you feel like you need that sort of master's in management straight out of undergrad to help you get into the workforce in the first place. If you're trying to pivot or something, like if you study, like I studied art history as an undergraduate. So I don't think Goldman Sachs was going to hire me off of that major necessarily. So in any event, there could be reasons. Anything that folks want to add to this, Hillary or Katherine? Differences between these two options?
I would just encourage you to Trey's point, to look at the employment reports for both of these programs and to see the types of roles the grads are going into and the salaries that they have as a starting salary coming out of each program.
Yeah, really different stuff. All right, next question we have is for Hillary. And this one, let's see, where is it here? Yeah, how do you stand out? It sounds like a simple question, right? But I think a lot of candidates are, we've heard a little bit about like who's in a full-time MBA program. We talked about all these people with lots of work experience, and so I think sometimes college students applying in the deferred route are like, well, how am I going to stand out? I don't have 5 years of experience. I'm young, and so what would you say to someone in this context?
This is a good question and a hard one to answer. But Graham, I think to your point of like, this question can also stem from a lot of things, right? We get a lot of applications, maybe your testing or your GPA isn't where you want it to be, or maybe a lot of people apply from your undergraduate school that you're coming from. So it's like, how do I stand out? And it's a hard question to answer because I think that standing out in this process is less about worrying about what others are doing or worrying less about how your profile can be perfect and just focusing on kind of like putting your blinders on, right? Like, how can you demonstrate like authentically who you are and not what you think we want to hear? Clarity of purpose, right? You don't have to know exactly what you want to do, but what's your thinking, right? Like, why do you see this in the future of yourself, whether you know exactly what you want to do or you're somewhere on the spectrum of like, this sounds like a cool path and this is why I'm pursuing it. And then as an admissions committee, right, like we're sort of, as a deferred enrollment applicant, we're sort of projecting your future success, right? So how can you show that through everything that you've done in the past so far, right? So through your resume and showing impact through your resume bullet points, quantifying where you can, picking a strong recommender who can say really awesome things about how, they saw you as a leader, through the organization that you led or through the summer internship that you had. So I think that standing out means like articulating why you went the MBA at that particular school, no matter where you are on the spectrum of like, exactly why, or you're interested in a couple things and an MBA will help you get there. How you hope to grow during the deferral period. We look for signs of leadership, as I mentioned before, formally and informally, as well as like intellectual curiosity, initiative, contributions to the classroom, what are your career ambitions, and then just a sense of what you're going to bring to the community. And I think we can piece all those things together through each piece of your application, such as the essays, your resume, what your recommender has to say about you, what you've achieved academically on your transcript, and so on. So an imperfect answer because there's not really a straight answer to this question.
No, I appreciate it though. And I think one thing though, you just reminded me, you guys read these separately. It's not like, I mean, so far as I understand, like you're reading
Yes.
these, like, it's a deferred person.
Yep.
And in fact, the deadlines are, I mean, I guess the deadlines are a little different because they're, staggered a bit later in the academic calendar year. So, and we'll
Yep.
get into that. We have actually a slide with the deadlines, but is everyone reading these separately? Like, or at least there's like someone on the team that, is sort of charged with maybe you all with like looking at these, but I just wanted candidates to know they're not being thrown in with the regular
Correct.
kind of candidate pool in
Yep.
terms of being assessed.
I think I can speak on behalf of all of our programs. It's a separate read, separate application deadline, separate lens that we're looking through your application.
Okay. Terrific. We have one more question that was submitted in advance, and this one is for Katherine. And we've kind of touched on this a little bit, but I'd love to hear more about this one. And this question is, how can you use the deferred period to take risks and explore opportunities in ways that people who don't apply deferred or just applying after they've worked a few years can't? So any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, so if you're working full time, you don't have an offer to an MBA program. First of all, if you're thinking about an MBA program, you're going to be spending a lot of time taking a standardized test, studying, writing your essays, visiting schools. So you have a lot more time to try some other things. And one of the things about business school that people don't always realize is just that recruiting starts really, really soon. And so you kind of need to have a strong idea of what it is that you want to do with your degree once you arrive. And so the deferral period really is that opportunity to try some different things, whether they be in the workforce, but also in your community. Maybe all this time that you don't have to focus on applying to business school, you can use to kind of make an impact in your community with an organization that you care about, to show leadership, to show impact. A lot of the things that recruiters are going to be looking for when they're interviewing you out of one of these MBA programs is for examples of how you have stepped up and led. And sometimes earlier in your career, you don't have as many opportunities actually within the workforce. Maybe the community can give you a good opportunity to kind of demonstrate some of your leadership skills and abilities. So that's one way. And then I guess I spilled the beans a little bit earlier by talking about a few examples of ways people have taken risks. But the biggest way I see is with entrepreneurship, trying out a company that you don't really know if it's going to be around in a year. That's a big one. And then also just kind of being a little bit more aggressive with your decision making.
Yeah, and I would argue even one step further. I've heard of folks who start a company. They're like, hey, I did a year or two of sort of traditional work experience. I have this idea. I'm just going to try it. And, that idea that you can take these risks without, whereas it's possible that if you haven't yet applied to business school, you might say, whoa, what if I try something and it completely flops and then I'm unemployed and I'm applying to business school or something, right? That is harder to do than when you already have the spot sort of locked in. I did want to ask, actually, while we're on this subject, there are some rules, right? Like I can't just decide that, like, so I get in, I'm in my deferral period, and after a year of work experience, I decide that I just feel like sitting on my couch and playing video games for the next year. And it's not my job. Is like, you guys, how are you're checking in with people, you kind of have an idea of what they're up to, right? I mean, you can't just sort of go rogue and sit on the beach and then tell the school, yeah, I'm going to come for the MBA. Katherine, I'll start with you on that.
Yeah, there's a little bit of checks and balances. When you do matriculate to one of our MBA programs, we want to set you up for success, and we want to make sure that you can reach your goals coming out of the MBA program. And so, unfortunately, sitting on the beach for a year or two before your business school is not going to set you up well for success after business school. So,
Right.
At Darden, we have a supplemental application to complete right prior to matriculation, where you do submit your resume, your career goal essay, and another resume, letter of recommendation, career goal essay. 3 aspects that you need to submit right prior to matriculation. And almost always you're approved for matriculation, but there have been instances where we ask the student to stay in the workforce a little bit longer prior to matriculation.
Okay. Trey or Hillary, anything you want to add on this one?
No, I think Katherine hit it on the head.
Yeah.
We have like at Tepper, our program is a bit smaller than what Darden's and Wharton's is. So we're hosting just like small interviews, very light, just to learn more about what you've done the past few years and with an updated resume and things of that sort. So it's very light, but yeah, there is like a formal process for students that are planning to enroll.
Yeah. Hillary?
Yeah, just to wrap it up, with our annual intent to enroll process, we ask for you to submit an updated resume. And so one of just the terms of being in deferment is that you've remained gainfully employed. We also understand that things happen, right? So sometimes layoffs happen, or there is some sort of pivot where there's a little bit of gap. More times than not, folks are landing on their feet. But similar to Katherine's point, sometimes it's just like an advising conversation of, hey, maybe it makes more sense for you to remain in deferment one more year, given a couple months of a break. And just something that I'll add to this question a little bit more broadly, because I think risk taking, everyone has a different level of risk tolerance. And just because you apply to a deferred enrollment pathway, it doesn't mean you have to take a risk during your deferment period. I sort of always view this as these periods give you the professional liberty to navigate your early career, knowing that an MBA is on the horizon. So yes, that could be a risk or a pivot, but it also could mean staying in the same role or staying at the same company or possibly just switching functions. So you don't have to take a risk. It just kind of gives you that knowledge.
I really appreciate you saying that. Yeah.
It's kind of dawning on me now that it's funny because we say take risks with deferred enrollment, but the reality is that people that are applying to deferred enrollment are usually the people who are more risk averse, who want safety, who want security.
Right. And there's nothing wrong with like taking that job out of college and working for 3 or 5 years and then, you know, and progressing within a firm and then coming off to business school. I mean, that's what a lot of people are doing coming to business school in the first place. So excellent. So I think what we're going to do now is open up our breakouts. Oh, I'm sorry. I totally forgot. So application deadlines. Sorry. So we have these deadlines up on screen. I would say, I mean, I think Trey made this point earlier. You're in the mindset right now. You're a student. Like getting an application together, I know you're thinking, oh, I've got homework, et cetera, but trust me, much easier now than when you're out in the workforce in like 4 years and haven't had to write an essay or done anything of this sort. So get your tests done and get your, applications together. These are the deadlines. I just want to ask Katherine, any kind of difference between the 22nd and the 15th? I mean, is it just, you just have these 2 deadlines? It's not like you have to be on April 22nd to have a chance or anything like that?
Not at all. It's just some people don't find out about these programs until later in the process. So we offer them another opportunity.
Okay. Got it. So mark your calendars. Now what I want to do is send our esteemed panelists into the backstage. So Trey, I really appreciate it. Hillary, Katherine, it's always so much fun to do these with you. We're going to send them backstage while we get them ready for the breakout so that you can go and ask them questions that are specific to their programs. But thank you so much, guys. Really appreciate it. So we're sending them backstage. I just wanted to remind everyone that we have another event next week, also on deferred enrollment. And I can't remember off the exact top of my head, and I'm sure all of you have seen this when you registered for this one, but I think it's Yale and Columbia and University of Chicago. There are a handful of schools that are joining us next week as well. We're going to open up the breakouts in a second, so just stay with us. I did want to also just remind you, though, that as you're kind of thinking about business school, clearadmit.com, our website, is a really good resource. It's totally free. There are admissions updates, there's advice, there's all kinds of great tools, analyses of the school's essay questions. We have a really amazing Gen AI tool that we've built that you can ask questions to. And we've been running clearadmit.com for more than 20 years now. And there's just a wealth of information and advice on the site that I encourage you to avail yourself of. We also have a weekly podcast that airs every Monday that some of you I know already listen to, but you can join us on Mondays for all kinds of great information about going to business school. What we're going to do now is open up the breakouts. So I'm hoping to see all of you next week at our event as well. But in the meantime, please join our panelists in their breakout rooms. You can bounce from one room to the other. So if you have a question for Katherine, and then one for Trey, then one for Hillary, you can just make your rounds. You can only be in one room at a time, obviously. But yeah, thank you so much to everyone for joining us today. I hope to see you all the exact same time next week when we talk to another batch of schools about their programs. And yeah, thanks for being part of the Clear Admit community, and yeah, for all the great comments that we had in advance today and questions. So enjoy your time in the breakouts, and hope to see you next week.